Hi, my name is Jordan Milner, and this is my video for Chapter 8. The concept of educational reform is ongoing. Our students and our society are constantly changing, and therefore the way we educate our youth must change along with it. Our country has gone through countless educational reforms and will continue to go through reforms. So what are the current reforms? The first one I'd like to talk about is the Race to the Top program. In 2009, the Obama administration introduced the Race to the Top initiative. The initiative offers bold incentives for states willing to create systematic reforms that will improve education and learning. To receive benefits from the Race to the Top program, each state would have to submit a plan outlining the steps they are willing to take towards education reform in their state. The reform focuses on 4 key areas. First, development of rigorous standards and better assessments. Second, adoption of better data systems to provide schools, teachers, and parents with information about student progress. Third, support for teachers and school leaders to become more effective. And finally, increased emphasis and resources for the rigorous interventions needed to turn around the lowest performing schools. Race to the Top differs from programs like No Child Left Behind in that it gives some creative freedom to the states and promotes innovation at the state level. States are able to create plans that they feel would best meet the needs of their students. Then, once approved, they receive funding to help put these plans into action. However, even within each state, districts and the needs of the students within those districts can be significantly different from one another. Can a statewide plan really guarantee success in each school? In developing a statewide plan for reform, is there really any way to encompass stakeholders from each school district to provide input for the plan? Race to the Top is great in that it gives some of the power for educational reform back to the states. However, the program, like No Child Left Behind and others before it, fails to recognize and improve the status of each individual school. The next reform that I'd like to talk about is the Common Core Standards Initiative. The Common Core Standards Initiative was created partially in response to the Race to the Top program. The Common Core is a set of rigorous standards in language arts and math that are designed to help prepare students to be college and career ready when they graduate from high school. State standards were created in the early 1990s to help unify school districts in each state and to hold teachers accountable for what they were teaching students. These standards became even more integral to education when the Bush administration put No Child Left Behind into action in 2002. Then in 2009, the Obama administration put the Race to the Top program into action. The Common Core standards go beyond uniting school districts in individual states, like the standards that we used to have in most states. The goal of the Common Core is to ensure that each individual student is being taught and assessed on the same standards at each grade level nationwide, instead of just statewide. Currently, 43 states have adopted the Common Core standards. Nebraska is not one of them. Although the Common Core standards are not a government-created reform, Obama has openly supported and encouraged the reform. I can understand the need for Common Core standards nationwide to ensure that all students are receiving an adequate education. However, the power over education has always been granted mainly to the local government. The adoption of Common Core standards almost nationwide, along with the introduction of Obama's Race to the Top program, seems to be granting power over education to our federal government. I believe this to be one of the major reasons that Nebraska has not adopted the Common Core. The last reform that I'd like to talk about is evaluating teacher effectiveness and teacher tenure. Studies have shown that the single most important factor in whether or not a student is successful is the effectiveness of a classroom teacher. Reforms such as No Child Left Behind and the Common Core Initiative give data-driven information about the effectiveness of a teacher based on standardized test scores. But what are we really doing to improve teacher effectiveness? In 2009, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation invested $300 million into the Intensive Partnerships for Effective Teaching initiative. The goal of the Intensive Partnerships for Effective Teaching initiative is to improve teacher effectiveness by changing the way districts recruit, retain, and reward teachers. The reform is currently being piloted in 4 school districts around the United States. The case study and implementation of several different interventions or reforms to improve teacher effectiveness began at the beginning of the 2011-2012 school year and will run through the 2015-2016 school year. It is the hope of the foundation and the initiative that the reform will show dramatic increases in the success of the students and teachers in the 4 districts. If the outcome shows that there was indeed a dramatic increase in success, It is the hope of the foundation to implement the reform in schools nationwide. Another central component to the debate about teacher effectiveness is teacher tenure. There are as many supporters of teacher tenure as there are against it. Today, many states are reconsidering the provisions behind teacher tenure laws, as well as examining if teacher tenure is improving the performance of teachers or hindering it. Teacher tenure is a highly discussed topic of reform in many states. There are a few states that have or are in the process of completely eliminating teacher tenure. Some professionals believe that abolishing teacher tenure would have many positive effects. One of the most highly supported arguments for the abolishment of teacher tenure is that it would reduce the number of teachers who are complacent with being less than average educators. Many people feel that eradicating teacher tenure would force educators to be held more accountable and therefore would motivate them to be more highly effective teachers. Not all states are ready to completely abolish teacher tenure. However, many are making significant changes to their tenure systems. Some states have already created more rigorous tenure systems, while many others are discussing adding such provisions to their tenure systems. These provisions would require teachers to teach for longer periods of time before being eligible for tenure. They may also link tenure to standardized test scores and proficiency. So now that we have discussed current reforms, what is the national interest of these reforms, specifically Common Core? I think the public's views on educational policies and reforms is based largely on what is reported in the media. Of course, the most highlighted reforms in the media will be those that come from the White House. Reforms such as No Child Left Behind and Race to the Top quickly gain national attention. The Common Core Standards Initiative has gained a significant amount of media attention now that Obama has openly supported the initiative. Americans have faith in our democracy, and therefore they entrust the federal and local government with decisions about education. I also believe that the local government can have a significant impact on the views of the public statewide. It is the duty of our government as well as our educational leaders to communicate the needs of students and to communicate the actions that are being taken to best meet the needs of our students. As stated earlier, the Common Core Initiative has become a major reform nationwide. With 43 states adopting the initiative and the backing of both the federal government and almost all of the local governments, the Common Core has had a significant impact on the national interest. States that have adopted the Common Core have an extreme amount of support from the public. However, states that have chosen not to adopt the Common Core also have a great deal of support from the public in their decision not to adopt. Yet again, the national interest seems to be based largely on the interests of both local and federal government. Education will always be of the utmost importance to the American people. Therefore, it is tremendously important for presidential candidates to keep educational reform in the forefront of their campaigns. The Common Core Initiative will likely be a hot topic for years to come as so many states have adopted the initiative. It will be extremely important that presidential candidates address the current state of the Common Core. Candidates will have to take a stand either for or against the Common Core, and they should be ready to debate their reasoning behind that stand. They should also be ready to take action. Those supporting the Common Core should elaborate on the successes of the initiative as well as make suggestions on how to continue to use the Common Core to improve education. And those supporting the Common Core will likely have more backing from the national interest because there are so many states that have already adopted it. However, those against the Common Core should focus on its shortcomings, as well as have a plan in place to abolish the Common Core and to take steps in a new direction towards improving education. It is crucial to the success of our nation that educational reform always be at the forefront of our government and our educational leaders. We must continue to be creative, data-driven, and mindful as we look for new ways to improve the state of education in the United States. Thank you for listening.